All right, we want to welcome everyone to City of Cottonwood Heights. This is our Cottonwood Heights Community and Development Renewal Agency. Tonight we're conducting our business meeting. It's 6:20. We'll get started and turn the time over for some explanation of our action items. So Tim, I'll turn it to you on the first one as far as elections.
Okay, we have a resolution of electing the officers and approving the appointment of staff as part of the Community Development Renewal Agency. With that, the resolution has the chairperson is Mayor Peterson, vice chairperson is Mike Shelton, chief executive officer is myself. That's the same as it has been back in December when we last met. Then we also have other staff positions, which is Secretary Paula Melger. And then I have one change. The Assistant Secretary I would want as Beatriz Mayorga. She's worked in that capacity before, and I think it would be a good fit to have her there. And then our treasurer would be Scott Jurgis. So with that one change, we're recommending approval of this resolution, electing and appointing the officers for the CDRA.
Thank you. Any questions from the council regarding these proposed appointments to staff of the CDRA? Any questions? If none, I'd entertain a motion for these appointments. Anyone brave enough to do that?
I move that we approve the appointments.
It's been moved by Councilmember Shelton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Bruce. Any further discussion? Please, Shane.
May I just clarify, this is a motion to approve resolution 2019-01, is that right?
That is correct. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to call for the vote. Councilmember Michael.
Yes.
Councilmember Bruce.
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken.
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Thank you. Are we council members in this case?
You're board members.
Board members. So, appreciate the clarification. Tim, I'll turn it to you again on consideration of resolution 2019-2, adopting a survey area, initiating a process for a community development a community reinvestment project area for a town center community investment area. I know there's some discussion on the naming of that, but I'll turn it over to you.
So I'm going to take a little bit of time and give some background. And so I hope you enjoy this presentation. I worked really hard on it. So I think it's important, and maybe all of you are familiar with urban renewal laws, what I like to call it, but state code related to urban renewal agencies. I'm going to give you just a little bit of background, and if you've heard all of this before and know all of this, you can rest for just a few minutes, but if not, I hope this is helpful. And this all leads into what we're going to be considering tonight and gives you a little bit of the background related to that. So historically in the state of Utah, related to tax increment financing and urban renewal or redevelopment agency work, there have been 4 different types of areas that cities have been able to approve. These are those areas: urban renewal areas, that's URAs, EDAs or economic development areas, CDAs, community development areas. And by the way, a CDA is what we have approved with the Canyon Center area. That's a CDA, and then a community reinvestment area. That's the latest change in state code that includes community reinvestment areas. Now, keeping in mind, the reason for this, these are tools to use for economic development or redevelopment purposes. And what can occur in these areas is through processes, through negotiation with taxing entities, you can use tax increment financing. What tax increment financing is, if you're not too familiar with it, and for the public's understanding, it's utilizing some additional tax revenues that are designated in an area with reinvestment occurring, and reinvesting those into that area. They can be reinvested to do a variety of things: parking structures, infrastructure, roads, environmental studies, environmental remediation, a variety of different things that's reinvested that tax money into those areas to facilitate redevelopment and opportunities to enhance communities. That's the whole purpose of tax increment financing. When you designate these, you can utilize that type of funding for this over a certain amount of time in a designated area. So first of all, urban renewal area, it's classic across the United States. Urban renewal areas were originally, way back in the 60s and 70s, they were designated to eliminate underutilized properties or blighted conditions. Okay, so in urban renewal areas, there was a requirement at one time for a blight study. That study includes analyzing crime statistics, vacant buildings, a whole variety of different things to determine if blight is in an area. And by the way, 50% of the properties had to have a designation of blight for it to be determined as a blighted area. And so a blight finding is a part of a URA. It's a catalyst for initiating development. There's limited use of eminent domain. Eminent domain's actually been a big part historically of urban renewal areas. And eminent domain is the taking of private property for public use, public purpose. And so eminent domain oftentimes has been involved in urban renewal areas. A taxing entity has to approve these areas, or has had to in the past. The taxing entities in our area for the state of Utah include the State Board of Education, 2 representatives from the school district where the property is located, 2 representatives from the county, 2 representatives from the city jurisdiction, and then any other smaller taxing entities, there's usually 1 representative. That's a taxing entity, just to give you some background. And typically, housing set-asides are part of this. Now, urban renewal, even though it's still in state law, you don't create new urban renewal areas. It's all community reinvestment areas. Same with economic development areas, although there's a component now to still allow for that. Economic development areas is really focused on if you have a company or a large entity that wants to come in and create jobs, you can designate an EDA, and it's all based on jobs and performance with those jobs, and taxing entities had to approve those. Once again, EDAs are primarily done away with as well. Community development areas, it was a provision to allow for promotion or provision of development, and it was open-ended. You could create an area, taxing entity was not involved. You had to negotiate individually with interlocal agreements with all of the taxing entities, and that's how they were formed. That's how we formed the Canyon Center. Just a little bit of background on that. So now we move in, effective May 2016, the community reinvestment area, and that's what we're proposing tonight. And this is the process related to that. You initiate a process to approve a project area plan. So tonight, you're initiating a process for us to prepare a project area plan. You adopt a survey area resolution, and it designates a geographic area, a description or map of the area, and contains a statement that the survey area requires study to determine the development feasibility needs. So tonight, what we're asking you to do is to adopt a resolution to initiate the process to have us develop a plan to bring back to you for consideration in the future through a public process. That's the basis of this. Other things related to this, we would prepare a plan in accordance with state law, make the proposed community reinvestment project area plan available for the public. So when we bring it back to you, if you want us to move forward with this, we bring it back to you for public comment and public hearing. And then before holding the plan hearing, this is the key part, and it seems like such a simple part, but it's the most complicated part. We have to negotiate with all the taxing entities with that plan to determine what they are willing to participate as far as the tax money that they would not obtain during the years of the creation of this area. So that's a big part of the process of creating the plan. Also, we would notice, this is in the future, if you designate or want us to move forward with developing a plan, we'd bring it back to you. We would hold a hearing on the plan, and whether the agency wanted to revise or modify that or reject it or approve it, that's up to you at that time when we go through that process. you would receive written and oral comments from the public as well through that process. And then I've already mentioned this, so I'm not going to go into this. Then once that plan is approved, if the CDRA approved that, it still has to go to the city council for approval of the legislative body. So that's the process that we would be talking about. So tonight we have two areas that we're proposing. One is called the town center, but I'll highlight that in just a minute. It'd be a 73-acre area along Fort Union Boulevard and 2300 East. This is the map showing the area. And keep in mind, part of our city council retreat, the plan was for us to investigate these options. So that's in line with the plans that we talked about as part of the retreat. The town center, the second one that we'll talk about, and they need to be approved separately, is the gravel pit. It's a 263-acre area. You're familiar with that. It includes the old mill site as well. So that would be the area.
Well, one question, sorry. Am I allowed to ask?
Sure.
Okay. It's hard for me to see that, and I did look it up in my packet, but is that including the north end of the gravel pit too?
Yes. It includes the north end. So the boundary, can you see the
City boundary is the yellow line.
yeah, the city, can you see my pointer?
No.
Okay. It includes the whole north, it includes the whole gravel pit area, clear up to the city boundaries. So yes, to answer your question.
This might be a foolish question, but if we know that somebody's considering developing it and they can do it on their own, why would we incentivize them for that? Why would we be doing that?
I'm going to explain the purpose
Okay.
shortly. Great question, and that's an important question to ask as well. Okay, I'll get to that in just a minute. So going to the town center, and there's been discussion about the name of that. The purpose for this plan, it would be to revitalize the underutilized property in the central area of the city, in the designated area. And then what we would do is work proactively with developers or other investors to pursue a commercial, office, or retail or mixed-use projects in the area. But it's more than just private projects. We want to create a place. It's a placemaking area where we would want to have potentially some public amenities with that, whether it would be things such as plazas or other things to make it a place where people congregate and gather to enhance private investment opportunities, but also to have a placemaking opportunity as well. So that's a big part of what the town center would focus on. Related to the title, there was a question and some emails that went back and forth, and I appreciate the information. It's up to the board on whether you want to approve a change to the title, and we're very receptive to that. It's your decision. One of the things as we move through the negotiation process with taxing entities, if we're just focusing on an area where we're trying to facilitate retail or commercial growth, it's much more difficult to get buy-in from taxing entities. But if they know the focus is to create that placemaking element, plazas, areas with commercial where people gather, like a town center. Historically, town centers are places where you have commercial retail, but they're gathering places. That's historically a definition of a town center. That's why we would love to have that town center component in the title. They're community activity nodes, as it says there with the second bullet point, or destination centers. They attract people. They're often associated with shopping and retail. You may have public buildings there or not. Town centers are both that way, and it is consistent with our general plan and our Fort Union plan, where there's reference in these plans. In fact, right here in the document talks about this area being a potential town center in the future. So one of the things that was brought up by board member Bracken, I'm trying to get my terms right here, is the name. And there was a suggestion to look at the Fort Union 23rd Town Center area that you suggested. I think that would be great. It includes Town Center, but it defines it more as the Fort Union 23rd East Town Center area. I'm completely comfortable with that.
When in my discussion with you, the town center, I get that's really useful for when we're going out to other agencies and dealing with them, my concern was, well, what about if my neighbor reads it? They don't have any idea, or that could be ambiguous as to where it was. That's where I kind of like the, just nailing it down, because if you say Fort Union 23rd, people are going, okay, yeah, I know where that is.
Yeah. So if we want to consider that change, I'm completely comfortable with providing more specificity related to that with that change. That's great. So any questions on the town center before I move to the gravel pit?
Go ahead, because I think we all have some questions at the end.
Okay.
So
Oh, can you just scroll back to the map just for 1 second?
Sure. Just a sec. Yeah. Oh,
One more.
excuse me.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Can I move on to gravel pit?
yeah, and we'll come back to some questions in a minute, hopefully to have
Okay.
a few minutes. Yeah.
Okay, so with the gravel pit, it would include the 263-acre area on the northeast area of the city. Around the gravel pit area includes the old mill site. The purpose of the area, and I'm going to answer your question related to this, is to create incentive opportunities for private development around a public transit center. It is the ideal option for us. Incentives will also help the CDR to shape public investment with private investment that we're hoping that will occur with the possibility of a transit hub in this area. And so to answer your question, the important thing to remember with these CDRAs, once you create this area, it does not mean you're going to provide tax increment financing to any project. That's something that the board is still going to have to determine. So to answer your question, I've worked in redevelopment areas where we've had an area in place for 25 years, and there have been many proposals that has come to me working in this capacity and then working with a board. And if it doesn't meet the needs that we feel are appropriate for an area, we don't have to invest in that. And I've recommended multiple times not investing. If you have a project that's going to move forward anyway, and you're comfortable with how that project's moving forward, and there's no need for public investment into that, you don't invest in that, and you don't commit to any investment in that. And I've recommended that multiple times in my career. The reason why I think it's important to have a redevelopment area here is there is such an important opportunity for us to shape a public component with a private component in this area that is critical for the future of our community on the north, for the future of our community related to the canyons and the opportunities up the canyons related to the transportation elements. And to have this creates incentive opportunities that we can invest in to hopefully shape that public-private element, recognizing that we don't have to invest in every project that comes forward in the gravel pit area. Maybe it's going to be just those related to a transit hub and around that, but not others. So I hope that answers your question. This doesn't mean that you invest in every project. It gives you opportunity to do that if the board wants to do that, but you do that on a case-by-case basis, basing it on if it meets the needs that the community has related to investment. Does that answer your question?
Tim, as we initiate this process, because it's just initiating a process, are the boundaries set tonight, or through the process, can the boundaries be modified?
Through the process, the boundaries can be modified.
So if we chose to expand or to shrink, as we get more information from the feasibility studies that would go along with this, we could modify.
We could. It would be modifying this like we're doing tonight. It would be modifying what we've already approved, but there is definitely that option. Because tonight, what we're recommending, let me just show you this. Our recommendation is approval of the resolutions to allow us to begin the process to prepare a plan and to do the feasibility study and to analyze the area and to come back with you with a plan on both of these areas. What we would anticipate, as it says here, is the June CDRA meeting, we would come back with you with an agreement with an entity to help us develop a plan, and then we would develop the plan and bring that back to you possibly late summer or early fall for your consideration and for
Can
public
you
hearings.
describe, when you say come back with a contract for some to prepare a plan, what does that, is that just a financial plan?
No. It's a plan analyzing the potential redevelopment opportunities that could be considered in that area, the potential private investment that could come as far as an economic feasibility study. It also includes a budget a projected budget on what you would look at, as well as the details of the actual boundaries, which would include legal descriptions and things that you have to submit. But also as part of that, which is a huge, huge part, is the negotiation with the taxing entities and their involvement in these plans
What would be
as
the
well.
timeline of those negotiations?
Well, we would start into the plan. If you approve tonight, we would come back in June with a contract with someone we work with, and then through the summer to the fall, we would be working with the taxing entities. Because that's critical. If you don't have any of their buy-in, you're not going to have any tax increment to address anything that you need. So that's a huge part of this process.
The plan preparation services that you describe here are funded from what source of funds?
It would be funded through professional services in our CDRA fund. So this upcoming, budget that you're going to be considering on June 18th has a professional services category with, I believe, $100,000, and the plan's not going to cost $100,000. It's just a professional services is where we pay out of the CDRA, out of existing funds that we have.
Appropriately, what would that cost be?
We're looking at about 10 to 14,000, and I know that as a fact because we've been already talking to groups about this.
And that's per plan?
No.
Oh, for both
That's
of them?
both.
Combined, yeah.
It's both. And that includes the negotiation process of with the taxing entities.
And legal associated with that, or that's separate?
We would have Shane work with us through this process. They have some legal that they would include their services as part of that as well.
But is the legal included in the 10 to 14? Or
No, that's just the
plan.
entity developing the plan. Yeah, Shane and his role would be separate from that. So we're recommending approval. We need them one at a time considered, but we're recommending approval. And I'm very comfortable if you're willing to change the title of that town center to the Fort Union 23rd East Town Center Community Reinvestment Area.
I guess I have one more question. So we go through the planning process and work with the taxing entities, but can you just describe for me what your vision is for the town center? Like, are we going back to our master plan where we have medians and bike lanes, and can you just visualize it for me?
Yeah, so going back to the master plan is a big part of this. Developing let me go back here. Destination centers to attract people, both retail, plaza elements, anything related to Fort Union, and the master plan related to transportation, what we can do to enhance the area to be a destination center place. I'm going to ask Mike related to the master plan, which you're
Well,
more
doesn't it still
familiar.
relate to the PDD as well? Because of the area?
It could. That would be a tool to redevelop the property. Someone could choose to implement. But yeah, this area has been identified since '05 in the general plan as a town center. The original general plan contemplated City Hall at that location or up here. Obviously, this one was chosen. But even in the general plan, it states that if City Hall's at one location, the other be used as a secondary destination center. And then the Fort Union master plan built upon that and developed a vision for better pedestrian accommodations and recreation and some of the aesthetics that you see in the Fort Union plan, the median concepts, and just some more creative kind of placemaking type planning concepts that we could see realized there. Obviously, some of those are public investment beyond what we could require via a standard zoning ordinance. So that's where I think this area as a CRA would be beneficial.
So if I can add also to that, what we would do is if we're working with a development group, and we would probably reach out to development groups as part of our economic development work with Mike's efforts, and bring groups in and say, here is an opportunity, here's land options to look at for redevelopment. As part of that, there could be incentives that we could negotiate with you, has to be approved by our board. But those incentives would include, we would want to see some of these elements, public elements included into a plan. But there's incentives to provide that as well with tax increment financing, and that's how it would work. That's hopefully we could get some development groups willing to invest in this and provide those public components that we want to see beyond what we can require already.
Tim, obviously one of the largest taxing entities that would be a team member, this would be the Canyon School District. Any preliminary discussions with them that you can share?
Yes. Yeah, we met with the Superintendent Briscoe and said that we're bringing this to this board. They have to approve us moving forward with it. But we outlined our idea and our interest in working with them if all of you approve this, moving forward for a plan. And he seemed very willing to be supportive of this, thought it was a good idea.
And they have a new defined process too.
Yeah, which we'd have to work through.
Hey, Tim, with the title, could we lead out with Town Center and call it Town Center at 23rd Fort Union? Catchier?
I
anyone?
think that's fine with me.
I'm not going to argue with Board Member Bruce about what's that. Yeah, that.
Is that cute?
I'm not a good.
Yeah, Town
good
Center at
discern
Fort
on
Union
what's
in
cute or better
2330s.
sounding, so.
It's descriptive, yeah.
I think that's great.
The
I like the-
specific, yeah.
If that works for everyone, we
Let me see if I kind of understood a little bit of what you've said, and part of what Mike said that I'm hoping doesn't get missed over. For example, under standard zone, I think over to the Holiday Center where they changed Holiday Boulevard,
Yeah.
they put in that plaza, they tore up the asphalt, all of that stuff. Again, that seems like that might be a lot to assess to a single developer to make all those changes to what was a public road, now is a public plaza. But using a CDRA type of thing, that gives you funding to where while you may not be able to require that of one particular development, one site, it gives you a general pool that you could then go and use funds for that public amenity. Does that make sense?
Yep, that's
Or is
exactly
that-
how that's
is that
exactly how it
correct
works.
thinking?
How it can work. That's exactly how it can work.
I think that helps my question on the visioning. If people sitting in the audience weren't sure what we were really talking about, we're talking about we're not doing this, but somebody could go to the owners of the Carl's Cafe and that whole development there and say, we'll buy you out and we want to turn it into, something like you'd see in Holiday, or you go across the street to Einstein's or Lone Star Tuckery. That whole area is that's the vision.
Yep.
Potentially, and now we're enticing people to see our vision and want to do something like that.
Correct. And there's some incentive funding potentially to assist with that.
When I think Scott's reference to Holiday and their town center, how that's kind of come together is an example of,
Maybe that's funding to put in the medians, put in the bike lanes, put in the beautification on the roadway or in plazas that are nearby that make it feel.
and it's not one developer. If it's
Right.
Harmon's, you've got different ones helping making that happen.
Yeah, and you negotiate individually with each of them and their projects if there's multiple developers.
Yep.
And you can pursue investing or not. It's up to this board and body.
Okay, we're almost out of time. Any further comments or discussion? Again, we're talking about initiating a process, and we'll still be back to us to look at more detail as we move forward. No further discussions. I'd entertain a motion from a board member to adopt Resolution 2019-2, which is the Town Center at 2300 East Community Reinvestment Area.
I move that we pass 2019-02.
It's been moved by Board Member Bruce. Do I have a second?
With the amended title,
Yep.
I'll second.
It was seconded by Board Member Bracken. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Board Member Shelton.
Yes.
Board Member Bracken.
Yes.
Board Member Bruce.
Yes.
Board Member Michael.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Also, under the same theme, it's entertain a motion for consideration of Resolution 2019-2, initiating the process of adopting a community reinvestment project area plan and budget for the gravel pit community reinvestment area.
Right.
I think it's 2019-03.
Yeah, it would be.
Well, it says 2 on my thing, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
typo.
yeah.
That would be two.
Yep, you're right, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's Resolution 2019-03, I'm sorry, yeah.
We approved Resolution 2019-3, adopting a survey area process for the gravel pit community reinvestment area.
It's been moved by Board Member Bracken. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Shelton. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote. Board Member Bruce.
Yes.
Board Member Bracken.
Yes.
Board Member Michael.
Yes.
Board Member Shelton.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Okay, not having any other business, I just bring to your attention the narrative. It states how the minutes will be approved. They'll be published and go out to you, and you have 3 days to respond, and after that, any revisions will be sent out, and then they'll be finalized. Okay, any other business? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move that we adjourn.
It's moved adjourned. All in favor, say second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned, and we'll reconvene in about 7 minutes.